I'm Christine and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm here to wrap up the last half of July. So I ended up reading 39 books for the month of July, and I have already chatted about the first 22 books that I read for the first half of the month. So my mid-month wrap-up is already up. I will link it in the description of this video because I won't be chatting about those books in this video. But I will be chatting about the last 17 books that I read that I haven't talked about yet. As always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I talk about, I do always link all of the books in the description of my videos. I also always have my Goodreads linked, which is where I review all of the books. So yeah, those are there if you want to grab those. So July was such a fun month. I actually ended up going to the Taylor Swift concert with my mom. So we flew down to Seattle for a weekend, had such a fun time. The show was amazing. Loved it so much. I'll put like a little picture here. Like we had great seats. We just had like a fun time and it was such a fun weekend. So yeah, that was definitely the highlight of my July, but of course I have some great reads to chat about as well. So first up, I ended up reading Ache by Marley Valentine. I've been reading this author's books this month and having a great time. So this one I ended up giving 4.5 stars. This one is an MM romance between two best friends. It also has a forbidden element because one of them is actually engaged to be married to a woman. So we have like all of that kind of tension going on as well. They end up taking this like last minute trip to Las Vegas before the wedding. And yeah, some things happen as well in the story, which I think you can tell from the title of the book, Ache. Like there's definitely some things that happen. It gets angsty. It's so emotional. I love like the found family aspect as well. Just like so good. One of my favorites from this author. Then I read Secret Puck by Ginshak. This is the first book in her Campus Nights series. This is a college hockey romance series. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This one I've been meaning to read for forever, and I'm so glad I finally got to it. It's actually probably my favorite from this author that I've read. Just like such a fun time and so good. So in this one, the hero and the heroine, they meet, they become friends. I loved how she is actually his teammate's little sister. So we kind of have like a forbidden sneaking about a moment as well with that whole thing going on. The audiobook in particular was just amazing. So yeah, just like low angst, hockey, college romance. So good. I definitely want to read the rest of the series. Yeah, 4 stars. Next up, I read The Puck Secret by G.N. Wright. This was my first time ever reading anything from this author, but I saw it like floating around on Instagram from a few friends and decided to jump into it as well and had such a good time. I ended up giving it 4.5/5 stars. So this was a hockey college romance. It has like an enemies to lovers kind of vibe going on. Hero is also the heroine's brother's like teammate, and so we have kind of that rivalry going on as well. And then we get secret identity as well because they first meet, like she ends up texting the wrong number and then it's his without them like knowing who they're texting. They become like texting buddies. They have like nicknames and things like that. And then in real life, they know one another as well because actually her family, or her dad in particular, did something super crappy to his family, to his mom. And so the hero definitely has like some hatred for the heroine, for her entire family. Totally makes sense why when you know what's going on in the story. And yeah, I just loved that like enemies, but like they lust after each other, like all of that. Like it's a very like hateful, lusty banter, banging, like just so good. Loved it so much. 4.5/5 stars. Next, I read Egotistical Puck Boy by Finley and Saxon James. This was my first time reading anything from either of these authors. This is the first book in their Puck Boys series, which is a hockey MM romance series, or this book in particular was MM. So this one has like an opposites attract, hate to love situation going on. I love that we did get some hockey action in this one. Like we're literally dropped in to the middle of a hockey game when the story starts. This one is low angst, and I thought they got together a little too quickly. Like they're already together within chapter 2. So yeah, I wanted a little bit more from this one. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Then I read Otherwise Engaged by Avery Keelan. This one caught my eye because on Instagram, the author posted how it was getting a new cover. It's fake engagement, a contemporary romance. So I decided to check it out because 1, I loved the cover. 2, I love fake engagement. And 3, I love this author's hockey romances. So I was like, let me try out one for contemporaries. So yeah, this one is a friends to enemies to lovers setup, which I do love. This one sadly was just okay for me. I ended up giving it 3 stars. Even for like a fake engagement, like it was just okay. I wanted like a little more depth to the characters. So yeah, 3 stars for this one. Then I had an arc of Too Safe, which the author sent to me, and it is a Why Choose a sports romance college series. The heroes in this are all football players. So we have 4 heroes and 1 heroine, and they end up moving her into their house that they all share because they know that she saw something that she wasn't supposed to see, and they kind of like don't believe her that she doesn't know what's going on. And so they're like, you need to come live with us while we figure all this out. Like we need to keep you close, find out like what you know, all of that. It was just like fun, entertaining. I gave it 4 stars if I didn't mention that yet. And it has like so much rep going on. Like there is mental health rep, there is chronic illness rep, there is neurodiverse rep, like all the things. It was such a fun time. Like, I loved seeing all of the characters. They all get their POVs and they all felt very different, which sometimes in Waichus, I feel like they all kind of blend and I can't tell like one hero from the other. But this one, I loved how they all had their own personalities and you definitely felt each hero in his chapter. So I did love that. Very steamy, just like a fun time. It does end on a cliffhanger though, so I'm excited to check out book 2 when that drops later this year. Then I had an arc of Glimmers of You by Catherine Cowles. This is the 3rd book in her Lost and Found series, and I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. This one has a brother's best friend, it has fake dating, there's a billionaire hero, there's a heroine with type 1 diabetes. Like I loved all the tropes in here. We also, of course, get some classic romantic suspense from Catherine Cowles. This one wasn't my favorite in the series. That still belongs to Echoes of You, which is book 2, but this one was a solid one, like definitely my 2nd favorite in the series so far. And I read Me Mi Amor by Elena Albertson. This one I was sent by the publisher, and so I decided to check it out because I thought the cover was absolutely gorgeous and I didn't see a lot of people chatting about it. So this one I sadly ended up giving it 3 stars too. I thought it was okay. So this one has a fake dating, kind of enemies to lovers vibes. It has a Taming of the Shrew kind of inspired retelling as well. We have like Grumpy Sunshine vibes. We have a swoony hero. We have culture clashing. We have like so many things going on in this book. So this one, the heroine is a first generation in a Mexican-American family, and she actually owns and runs the farm that her family had always worked for and ran. So she is like a top California female farmer, and the hero actually owns like a chain of fast food, kind of like taco places. And so he's deciding to kind of like rebrand, refigure out his business. And so he wants to go and meet like farmers and all of that. So he ends up going to her farm to kind of meet her and kind of like figure out what's going on at her farm and how he can incorporate that with like other farmers. So this one, the heroine's family is very strong in their like traditional old-fashioned views. They believe like all of their daughters need to get married, that they can't go out on dates, they can't go out with men at night, like they have to ask permission from the fathers to date, like kind of all of those like old school traditional beliefs, which kind of got a little bit old, honestly, reading about it. So yeah, I get that that kind of whole aspect influences the heroine's life and her possible relationship with the hero, but it kind of just didn't work for me. Like I didn't want to read about it. So yeah, 3 stars. Then I read What We Broke by Marley Valentine, and this one was so good. I gave it 5 stars. This is the newest book from this author. So it's an marriage and crisis kind of romance. So the heroes in this one are married and they have gone through something super traumatic and sad that happens in the beginning of the story. So definitely check content warnings if you need it. And they both end up dealing with the grief differently. And so we kind of cut to a year later and they are definitely not on good terms, like kind of wanting to get a divorce, possibly go to therapy, like families broken apart. And so we kind of see them coming back to one another. So good. Definitely recommend the audiobook. It was amazing. It was Teddy Hamilton and Joe Arden. Like absolutely phenomenal. Cannot recommend the audio enough. Definitely check Hoopla because I believe so many of this author's books are on Hoopla. So if you have access to that, definitely do it. Next, I had an arc of The Viking She Loves to Hate by Lucy Morris. So the author reached out and asked if I wanted to try out this new book from them, which just dropped in July. So I decided to give it a go. This is a historical romance, obviously Vikings. We have enemies to lovers situation and class difference as well. Sadly, this one ended up just being okay for me and I gave it 3/3.5 stars. So like I mentioned, this is a Viking historical romance. It takes place in, I believe, like AD 800 range in the fjords. And we have the heroine, she's actually like the princess, and her father ends up inviting this like boat builder to come live with their community. And so the heroine's upset because she has always been like the master boat builder there. She wants to make that her career, where her father wants her to like settle down, get married, have children. And so her father's like, well, why don't you guys like compete to see who's going to be the boat builder? And like, if you lose to his daughter, like you're going to have to marry. And if the guy loses, like him and his daughter are going to have to move on and like get kicked out of the village. Yeah, the hero in this one, he is a widowed single father to his daughter. And so he's trying to definitely make it work because he wants to provide like a new place for his daughter. So yeah, it was okay. It was kind of cutesy. Tons of like boat building though. So if you want to see the entire like boat building competition and all of that going on, I mean, check it out. But yeah, I gave it 3 stars. Then I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I love this one so much, gave it 5 stars. I had read The Dead Romantics by this author last summer, loved that one too, also gave that one 5 stars. And this one just like blew me away as well. I absolutely loved it. This one kind of has like time travel, magical realism going on. So basically the heroine moves into her late aunt's apartment, and this house like apartment has some special things going on with it. So basically every now and then you can just like kind of slip into the past. So time travel, so to speak. So the heroine ends up going back 7 years in the past and she meets the hero there. So yeah, they're like in different times and we have like so much going on, and it was just so good. I loved it so much. Like the heroine works in the publishing industry. and loved it. Like, definitely recommend. Check out the audio. Like, it's so good. Next, I read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. So this is the first book from this author, their debut adult romance, even though I think they like are really popular in the fanfic world. This one had a lot going for it that I should love, but it just like didn't work for me, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. So this one is Second Chance. It's forced proximity. We have like Grumpy Sunshine vibes. They end up working together. The heroine is like a wedding planner, and the hero is the florist for the weddings and the events. This one I just never really connected to either of the characters. I wasn't rooting for them. There was like a whole lot else going on as well, like filming of a reality show. There was the heroine like planning the wedding for a couple as well. They're like actors. A lot of flashback for them as well. But again, I just like wasn't connected to it. The hero just came off like a major grump, where like I didn't find anything endearing or even see why the heroine liked him. Like I don't know, I didn't get it. Also just didn't get what the hero saw in the heroine either. Like he went from kind of being annoyed by her most of the time to all of a sudden liking her, and like I just didn't get it. I didn't get what they liked about one another. Just wasn't sold on it. I'm probably in the minority for this one though, but yeah, 3 stars for me. Then I read Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This one I ended up giving it 2 stars to. So this one I had really enjoyed the author's 2 previous romances, which was The X Talk and then Weather Girl. I thought those ones were fun. This one though, I sadly, like it just never worked for me. So basically in this one, the heroine is a ghostwriter for celebrities who are like writing their own books, but she's actually the writer, and then she ends up getting paired up with the hero who was a kind of used to be popular, like a, you know, C-list actor who was on like a really popular like werewolf show. He's writing his own story now, and she's his ghostwriter, and they end up traveling together because the hero also like does all these like Comic-Con type events like for the series that he was on years ago. So yeah, we get a lot of them traveling about to different states like with all the chapters, and I just found it like super tedious, really boring, just never connected to them. So yeah, sadly gave it 2 stars. I ended up reading Ledge by Stacey McEwen. So this one I had heard some mixed reviews from when it came out like earlier in the year or last year, and it kind of like wasn't on my radar, but then I got a really gorgeous like special edition in, which is stunning, and so I decided to check it out just to see what it was about. But this one was honestly just disappointing, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. So yeah, like I mentioned, I had heard like not so great reviews for this one, but I wanted to go in like with a kind of like open mind and just be like entertained or have a good time. And like, I don't know, even that was too high. The premise for this one, it sounded really cool. Like the heroine is the last in her family. It's a fantasy romance. She lives on this like icy ledge, which is kind of like more of a prison than anything. And there are like human sacrifices. There are these other creatures who come and like pick humans and take them away. You can fall off this ledge, like they're starving, all of these things going on. And yeah, it just like never worked for me. Yeah, 2 stars, let's move on. Then I read Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. This is the second book in her next series, and I loved the first one in the series, and so I decided to jump into this one because the audiobook just released. It is on Hoopla, so check that out if you have access to it. And this one I had a great time with. I gave it 4 stars. So this one is a friends to lovers romance, and the romance and the hero is so cute and so sweet. So basically in this one, the hero and the heroine meet. Their best friends are the couple of book 1. And so they meet through them. They're at a New Year's Eve party, and they end up sharing a kiss at midnight. And they're both kind of like feeling one another, but instead of like taking it to the next level or the next step, they decide to friend zone each other instead. So we cut to like a year later, and they are best friends now, and the heroine is kind of feeling like in a rut in her life. So she hates her job, kind of like hates where she is. She's seen all of her friends like couple up and partner up, and she's just feeling like lost. So she ends up getting drunk one night and then purchasing a giant yellow school bus and deciding she's going to renovate that to live in. So she ends up going to the hero because like they're friends, and also he's kind of like a handyman and like repair guy on the side. So she ends up asking him for help renovating the place. I just loved it. Like if you love a cinnamon roll sweet hero, the hero is definitely that. I just loved like forced proximity and them kind of seeing that they both have feelings and like why are they fighting it and giving in finally. I do wish the only thing that kind of held it back for me on this one was that we don't get the hero's POV, which I would have loved to see. It's only told in the heroine's POV, but yeah, otherwise a great one, and I gave it 4 stars. I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in her Gold Rush Ranch series, which I have never gotten to. I've only read her Chestnut Springs series. So this one has been recently released on audio, just book 1 so far. It is on Hoopla and Libby, so definitely check those if you have access to them. And I had a great time with this one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This one is Small Town, Enemies to Lovers. Like all of her books, it takes place in Canada and like a kind of ranch setting. It's a workplace and sports romance as well, with the heroine being a horse trainer and the hero kind of being the new owner of his family's ranch. So I just had a great time with this one. I loved how in the beginning they get off to the wrong start because he's assuming from her name's Billy Black. So he's assuming when she shows up, she's going to be a man. And then he sees this woman show up at the farm and he's like, oh my God, like my mom is trying to set me up with somebody else. Like, please leave, get out of here. He's kind of rude about it. And then she's like, excuse me, like I'm here for a job. And so yeah, it kind of goes from there. Definitely don't start off on the right foot. I love seeing that animosity kind of play out throughout the book, and I loved the heroine. Like, she's just so feisty, and I loved seeing her like give as good as she gets from the hero. Love seeing the heroine bond with the horses at the ranch, and seeing Violet make an appearance in this one because she is the sister of the heroes that we've seen in the Chestnut Springs series. So I know like she gets a book in this one, which I'm excited for. So yeah, I just had a good time with it and gave it 4 stars. Then lastly this month, I ended up reading Slain the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. And this one I had really high hopes for. I love the cover. I have enjoyed this author's fantasy romances, but this one sadly was just okay for me, and I ended up giving it 3 stars. This one I just had like different hopes for it, and it didn't live up to that for me. It just felt very tedious and very repetitive, and it just kind of like meandered, it felt like. I felt like it didn't pick up until maybe like the 50-60% mark, where I started to get interested and intrigued, and then it kind of just like dropped off for me again. So yeah, 3 stars. I don't know, like it was just okay for me. So those are the books that I read for the second half of July. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I talked about, or what some of your favorite reads in July were. I'd love to know. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.